Hello, comrades. It's Paul. This week I've been beaten, eaten, and abused by the Cannibal Plains. My journey already had a rough start because I had the smooth brain idea of starting in the western half of the Cannibal Plains and then working east from there. I was sorely disappointed at this time. Despite this area being called the Cannibal Plains, there were 0 planes and 0 airplanes to speak of. I felt misled. This was shaping up to be the greatest naming scandal of the 21st century. But my team did not give up. We forged onward, beaten and bruised across the Cannibal Plains until we arrived in the eastern part. Here we found exactly what we were looking for. Flat land, fertile soil, ninja women, and most importantly, a restored hope and building a home in this treacherous land. From a global perspective, the Cannibal Plains is quite far north on the map, and it's no wonder why the rest of civilized society has abandoned this area, given that cannibals roam around in droves. While being far away from most cities, the Cannibal Plains has a few civilizations in the south. There is a fishing village on the northern coast, you have the Flotsam Ninja HQ in the Hidden Forest, and most importantly, the tech hunter city of World's End. In terms of natural resources, the Cannibal Plains is top notch. The fertility here is 100% green, 50% arid, with an overall rating of 75%. As for stone and water, they're both in good shape, although I will say with the water, you'll have better luck with water levels on lower ground in this area, or if you settle near the coast. Perhaps the hardest task in the Cannibal Plains is finding copper and iron close enough together. This is not a deal breaker though, as most areas do have this issue. Fortunately, the iron is of good quality, and while the copper has an average quality, one vein is likely going to be all you need for your base's needs. Depending on where you settle, you might not need iron or copper either. More on that later. Moving on to hostile mobs, it likely goes without saying that there are cannibals in this region. But the cannibals are not alone by any means. There are a variety of other enemies too. Starting off though, with the cannibals, you'll have large groups of them wandering around all over the place. While their combat values are never quite high, it doesn't really matter because their numbers make up for it. Similar to Fogmen and the Fog Islands, cannibals aim to swarm opponents and knock them out one hit at a time. Their weapons are well suited for this too, with most carrying cleavers or blunt weapons that can deal damage through armor. As with most humanoid enemies in the game, your best strategy when dealing with cannibals is to run away if your team is at risk. Their top run speeds usually don't exceed 17 miles per hour, and any character with even just a little bit of athleticism will be able to get away. If one of your characters gets abducted by cannibals, they're going to be in a tough spot. However, this is where the toughness skill really shines. If a character is tough enough, they will regain consciousness and be able to pick the lock for their cage. They can then either run away if their legs are intact, or one of your faster characters can stage a rescue. If a character is in a cage for a certain amount of time though, the outlook is not good. Unlike fog princes who slowly eat their captives, cannibals hack away at their food before cooking it over a fire. Unless your other squad members can interrupt the cannibals slicing your comrades into a fillet, then you might want to start prepping for a funeral service. Another notable aspect for cannibals is that they have a wide variety of factions. I do have the Reactive World mod, but I'm fairly certain that even in vanilla Kenshi, there are several cannibal subtypes. Each have their own war paint, which is either red or green, and the more powerful cannibals travel in smaller groups, while the smaller cannibals travel in hordes. The fun doesn't stop with cannibals in this region either though. Funnily enough, Cannibal Plains is a blend of other hostile mobs. If you spend time in the Cannibal Plains, you'll likely see Shrieking Bandits for example, Berserkers, and Beak Things. If you do see any one of these enemies, they'll probably be fighting the cannibals too. The Shrieking Bandits usually appear in the western part of the Cannibal Plains, and although they do not wear armor, their combat skills aren't terrible. Given that Shrieking Bandits can spawn in groups of up to 26 members, be mindful of them and don't pick a fight unless you're ready to take some damage. Berserkers function almost as an upgraded version of the Band of Bones faction. They have good combat abilities and carry around large fragment axes. Be cautious of them. To be frank, their combat skills are 2 times or sometimes even 3 times better than a cannibal's, so don't underestimate their strength. Beak Things are also here too. Isn't that wonderful? Ironically, you'll likely be bothered by cannibals more than Beak Things, So, you might find that beak things help you out. After all, if there's a field of 30 unconscious cannibals, beak things aren't going to be as motivated to chase you down. Beak things also can have nests, so watch where you step. If you aggro a beak thing nest onto your party, you might have to say your final goodbyes or at the very least reload a save file. Before moving on to other key considerations for the Cannibal Plains, I do want to mention that Holy Nation outlaws can spawn here too. They aren't that strong and their loot isn't very good, so you can handle them however you like. If you want to take part in the action here, I was able to find some great base locations, which I'll mark here. If you truly want an eventful experience, this location is the way to go. It's still on the eastern part, but it's a little bit further inland. For something safer, if you can call anything in the Cannibal Plains safer, you can go with one of these other options. They'll be closer to the hidden forest or the northern coast if you need to bail. As far as setting up a base here, my biggest advice would be to come prepared. Don't come here empty-handed or with untrained characters, or you will have a bad time. If you can add animals or skeleton characters to your squad, then that is ideal. Cannibals will not try to eat them. In addition to bringing building materials and iron plates, I would suggest having plenty of wheat and or green fruit. The green fertility is perfect for growing food. However, once you're in the Cannibal Plains, there isn't really a good way to get the farming materials that you need. I struggled a lot with food when I was here, and since there wasn't a beak thing nest nearby, I didn't have a reliable source of meat. I handled this by taking a business trip to the Leviathan coast. This was a painful trek though, so I would say you should look to pick up wheat and or green fruit in the Holy Nation or some other city before heading up here. If you're not on good terms with the Holy Nation, you can steal from their farming villages in Okrant's Valley. Small amounts of wheat can also be purchased in the fishing village or at World's End. Once you have arrived in the Cannibal Plains, you'll want to set up your walls and gate as quickly as you can. If you picked a coastal settlement, you don't even need a front gate. The water works well enough. After you're established, there will likely be things you need to buy as you build. For that, your best option is to go to World's End. Like most other tech hunter cities, World's End has a lot to offer. Oh yeah, earlier I did mention that copper and iron could be sourced elsewhere. What I meant by that is if you go to the floodlands, you can hunt the robotic spiders which live there. These naughty little boys drop electrical materials and iron plates. And if you're worried about being able to hunt them, you don't want to engage in melee combat with them. What you'll want to do is give a couple of characters decent crossbows and then kite the spiders around because they're so slow. On a final note, there is light acid rain here in the Cannibal Plains, but it is light. Doesn't last for very long, and honestly, I forgot it was even a factor as I set up here. All in all, I would say that the Cannibal Plains doesn't have any major weaknesses. If anything, the distance from most other towns is the only significant flaw I see. If you're prepared to face the danger, then it's just going to be a very rewarding place to settle. Those members of your squad which do survive living here will develop into well-trained soldiers as time passes. For me, this meant that most of my characters gained 10 to 20 combat levels in less than 10 days. Best of luck to you in your Kenshi journey if you choose to make the trek out here, and a big thanks to all of you who have watched the video up until this point. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that button so you don't miss out on my future uploads. I will see you all next time.